Hi, BookTube. Uh, I thought I'd make a video because I thought I'd share my memories of keeping a diary or a journal. Uh, just a minute ago, I was sitting here reading, I started reading the introduction to this Sleepless Nights, a novel by Elizabeth Hardwick. And I was reading the introduction, haven't gotten to the text yet of the novel. I also have here tonight sight readings, American fictions. These are essays by Elizabeth Hardwick on, like for example, there's a essay on Edith Wharton, Margaret Fuller, Gertrude Stein, John Cheever, John Updike, Philip Roth, Richard Ford, Catherine Ann Porter, Edmund Wilson, Norman Mailer, Mary McCarthy, Elizabeth Bishop. I wanted to read one on Elizabeth Bishop because she and the poet Robert Lowell had a correspondence and close friendship. And also I got in the mail today Jerome Chron, The Loaded Gun, Emily Dickinson for the 21st Century. I also bought with this The Secret Life of Emily Dickinson by Jerome Chron. But so when I'm sitting here and my wife's at work, the house is quiet and silent, and I want to talk, but there's no one to talk to. So what I do is even though I closed my diary for today, which is March the 20th, 2017, right now it's 9:26 at night, that I start writing, I just get my diary out and talk to myself. And that's how I got into keeping a diary, I think, because I've always been kind of a loner, kind of an introvert, kind of shy. I didn't really have any friends growing up. When I became a teenager, like 16, 15, I always had girlfriends. I was always kind of shy, but girls were always kind of attracted to me, maybe because I was shy. So I always had girlfriends, but when I wasn't with my girlfriends, I was by myself. Well, as I have mentioned in past videos, that in 1968, December 1968, my mother was divorced, and we were living in Los Angeles. And I'm the oldest of five. I have a brother Mike, who works for the Washington Post. I have a sister Robin, who lives in Maryland. I have another brother that lives in Texas named Robert, and I have a sister Danielle who lives in Sacramento. And I'm not close to any of them. I do have them on Facebook. But the point is, in 1968, December, my mother was divorced, and she was coming home from work. She was working in a bar, and she was killed in a car wreck. And then I went to live with my aunt up in San Pablo, California, which is in the San Francisco Bay Area. You have San Pablo, Richmond, El Cerrito, Berkeley, and then across the bay you have San Francisco. So I went to live with my aunt when I was 16, but it didn't work out because my aunt had just lost her husband. She was an alcoholic, very poor. She had 3 sons, and there was Mike and myself. And to make a long story short, I went to live with foster parents. And that's when I started writing. About when I was in the 12th grade, I was living with a foster family, and I really started writing when I was in the 11th grade. But what I would do is that when I was alone, and I've always been a loner, I would just get out and I would write. And back in those days, I just wrote sporadically. But what I would do is that I would write, and then I would store what I have written. Uh, my my first foster parents, I had foster parents when I was in 11th grade, and then I had foster parents when I was in the 12th grade, and we were always friends. It wasn't, we were always friendly. But my first foster family was, I kept my diaries in an old, like in a box or a trunk, and I stored it underneath her house. And I would write, and then I would put it in that, beat up old steel trunk, a little tiny thing. And then I was writing, and then I became a Christian in 1970. I went to junior college there in San Pablo at Contra Costa Junior College. And I was writing here and there. One of the classes I took in junior college, it was a psychology class, Introduction to Psychology. And one of the assignments was to keep a diary. And I had just broken up with my high school girlfriend, and I was going through all those things, and going to college. And I met a girl at a Christian commune named Kathy, but I was always writing. And even though I was a new Christian, I was still smoking marijuana and still taking psychedelics. I was a baby Christian. I was just beginning to know what it means to live the Christian life. I was involved with the Jesus People in Berkeley, California, and there was a commune in Richmond, California that I was involved with. But I was always writing. When I wasn't with my girlfriends, I was always off by myself. Back in those days, I had a 10-speed, and I always had a little backpack, and I kept in my backpack a dictionary and books, and I kept this thing. I still have it. I've had this going on since I was in high school. I've kept it for 45 years. This is what I used to write on, and I still have it. And I would ride around my 10-speed, and I'd stop someplace, maybe in Berkeley or in Tilden Park in Berkeley or someplace, and I would sit down and I would just write. Wherever I was at, I would go to Richmond Public Library and I would write, or I would be sitting in the college library and I would be writing. And if I was just anywhere, I was always pulling out and writing. And that's how I got into keeping a diary. And when I went to college the second year, I went to college here in Michigan, up in Mackinac Island. And back in those days, I should backtrack, I was always sick with an upset stomach. I had ulcers when I was growing up. Since I was 10 years old, I had ulcers, and so I was always sick with my stomach, which prevented me from sleeping all night. I was always getting up with this upset stomach and sick and stick to my stomach. And what I would do is I would sit at night by myself somewhere, maybe 1 o'clock, 2 o'clock, 3 o'clock, 4 o'clock in the morning, and I would be writing about what was on my mind. And I did that for years. And when I was in college up in Mackinac Island at Mackinac Island Liberal Arts College, I think I don't know what year that was. Maybe it was 73, 72, 1972, 73. I was always writing at night by myself. Always had girlfriends in college. But then I came back to California because the school went to financial crisis, and I just kind of, when you're young, I just kind of lived. Well, I lived in communes. I lived just out in the woods. I had a little shack in the woods there in Richmond on my first foster parents' property out in the woods. I had a little tiny shack, and I lived just I don't know how I just survived. And then I start back in about maybe 73, 74. I joined the Richmond Rescue Mission staff, and I had a little room, a little loft room in the back of the storage. Back of the storage, there was this ladder that lit in the little crawl space, and there was a bedroom up there, and that's where I lived. And then I also, I also lived on weekends. I would go and live out in the woods on that shack. But I was always writing because I was always sick. And when I was at the rescue mission when it was quiet and I didn't have any duties or responsibilities, I was always writing in my diaries. And then I would go up and I would store them underneath the house of my first foster parents. But then my first foster parents, she moved away up to state of Washington. So I had to find another place for my diaries, and I stored them for one time at a church that I was attending. They had a little storage room. I stored them there, and then I had a girlfriend, and I stored them in her attic. So, but I was always writing because if I wasn't with my girlfriend or doing something with them, I was by myself. And I would just write. And whatever was going on around me, whatever I was reading or thinking, or what I was struggling with, or my turmoil, or if I was sick, if I was feeling guilty or feeling depressed, or I would just write down whatever was going on in my life, whatever I was reading or seeing or experiencing, my relationships with my girlfriends, the Bible studies, church, whatever. I was always writing it down. And I did that, and I've been doing that up until today. Around 1977, 78, I left California I left the rescue mission, and then for a while, I had a girlfriend, and I worked for a while in the 7-Eleven store, but I was kind of just unsettled, and then I decided I wanted to go back and finish college and get my bachelor's degree, because if I wanted to be a minister, I had to finish college before I could go to seminary. That's the way it is in Presbyterianism. So I went to Reformed Bible College here in Michigan in Grand Rapids. And that was around 78, I think, 77, 78. And I worked at Mel Trotter's Mission in Grand Rapids. Then I met Carol, who is my wife today. I met her at Reformed Bible College. But I was always writing. But when I left California to go to Reformed Bible College in Grand Rapids, I burned all my diaries. And I regret it to today. I burned them all. I had this kind of crazy idea of burning all the bridges, starting a new life, starting over, leaving California, leaving all my past, and starting anew. And so I burned everything. So all I have downstairs in the lower level is my diaries from 1978 until today. I started writing. Well, I didn't burn the whole year. When I left California, it was only half a year, so I have some stuff that I wrote when I was in California. I think I've shown those in the earlier videos. So when I met Carol, I met her, we were married 6 months later, and I've been writing every day since. We've been, this year in May, we've been married 38 years. And I've been writing every single day. We've raised 3 kids. I have a son who's 36, a son who'll be 35 this year, and I have a daughter who's 32. And they're married. We have grandkids. My wife and I are now 64 years old. We've raised kids. Now we're having grandkids. And I write it all down. I just write down my life. I write down what I'm reading. I write down what I'm thinking. I write down when I make book YouTube videos. I just write down my everyday life. When I get up in the morning, what I do in the afternoons, what I do in the evenings, what I'm reading, what I'm experiencing, what I'm feeling. When I was working, I wrote down, I would write at lunch periods. On weekends, I would write down stuff that I was teaching in Sunday school. I just write down everything. And I still do today. That's why I said I consider myself a writer. I'm not anything. I've never really been anything except a writer. I realized a long time ago, back in the 80s, I couldn't be a professional writer because I just don't have the education, I don't have the talents, I don't have the discipline. And I'm a Christian. I mean, I'm an evangelist. I'm a teaching elder. I wanted to be a gospel minister, and I never really wanted to be a professional secular writer. I just wanted to tell people about the Lord Jesus Christ and to teach the Bible. And that never happened. That was the biggest disappointment of my life. But now that I'm old and I've bowed down to the will of God and accepted His plan for our lives, and you just got to live each day and write it all down, and that's what I do. I spend my days here living in this very comfortable middle-class life. I have plenty of food, warm clothes. I have a loving wife. I have great children, great grandchildren. The Lord has blessed me richly. I have nothing to complain about. I haven't been sick in years. I started taking this medicine about 15 years ago, maybe 17 years ago, and I'm not sick. I still have sleep apnea. My wife says I have a hard time sleeping, but I take sleep pills at night to help me sleep. But the Lord has been good and faithful, and I'm writing it all down, and I hope and pray that I can write to my last day I'm here on this earth. Yeah, but I have told my middle son Josiah that when I'm dead, to take all my diaries out into a cornfield and set fire to them all, because right now probably my diaries is like 40,000 words. I write over 1,000 pages a year. I save magazines, emails, I copy stuff off the internet. It just goes on and on and on. It's not worth keeping, and my kids don't have the room to store all my diaries. It's just crazy. So I told him to just destroy. I told Josiah, our middle son, to take Dad's diaries and take them out into the field and set fire to them. I don't think even my kids look at my booktube or read my online diaries and LiveJournal and Diaryland and WordPress. But that's how I got into writing, keeping a journal. Like I said, I'm a loner, I'm an introvert, but I love to write things down. That's how I get things straightened in my mind, and it's how I cope with the world and all its insanity and craziness. Try to put it in some kind of cohesive order, some kind of narrative in my mind. So yeah, I just want to share those thoughts with you, because I'm sitting here and it's going on 9:42 at night. It's a Monday and tomorrow's a Tuesday, and like I always say in my diary, existence keeps flowing by. So I thought I'd share these thoughts with you about my life and why I keep a diary, so next time, I'm hoping you're having a good night and a good week, and I'll see you later. Bye.